The first part of this tutorial is called the underdrawing. I start working on this portrait from a very quick sketch on canvas with a graphite pencil. The size of my canvas is 60 × 80 centimeters, which is about 24 × 30 inches. I have stained my canvas before painting. I used pure ultramarine and turpentine to paint over it, to slightly darken the surface and give it a cool shade because the entire painting is going to be quite cold. After that, I let it dry for 1 day, and now it is ready for painting. You can start working on the drawing with either charcoal or a graphite pencil, or even a brush, which needs some experience of yours. If you do not have enough experience, I would suggest using a graphite pencil. But do not take a very soft pencil. I personally prefer using HB or B pencils, because they are not very soft. In the beginning of any painting, I care mostly for two basic things: composition and proportions. If you do not do it at the beginning, then later, when you start painting, it's gonna be very difficult to change the proportions. You will have to remake the entire portrait, which takes a lot of time and doesn't make a lot of sense. So, to avoid many mistakes, make sure that the proportions are correct. How to do it? The easiest way is printing out the picture you will use, the same size as your portrait, and literally measure proportions with a ruler. It is a simple way for the very beginners. I do not use this method. I make measurement just visually comparing big distances. I compare the width of the entire head to its height, the length of the nose to the height of the forehead, and so on. When you get more experience, you will see that it is a very simple method everyone can use. I always first outline the overall silhouette of the head, the eye sockets, but not the eyes or eyelashes, only the big shapes. I also outline the nose and shade a little the core shadow on the tip of the nose to add some volume. I do it with a few very light lines and don't press the pencil hard. I do it just because tone helps us to separate one plane from another one. When you need to correct the drawing, use an eraser. I shade in the eye sockets before drawing the eyes. It makes sense because the eye socket turns away from the light source and gets into a deep shadow. we have to always remember about the head structure and the big planes. I will talk more about it while painting. And now I quickly start drawing the eyes. Both of them almost at the same time. I draw the irises, pupils, and eyelids. Right now we are not working on the details. We only outline the oval shape of the head, the big silhouettes and proportions. There are many ways of making the underdrawing. Some artists make a rough sketch, drawing every even tiny plane of the head. In my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend so much time on that. I personally never work like that. I like making quite a quick sketch, set up the right proportions as I mentioned, make a good composition, work on the details a little bit, and then spend more time on painting. Finishing the details while painting. But I do not deny any other method of drawing. You can use any other one you personally like. The head is slightly inclined. Look at the picture and you will notice it. So when drawing the facial details, make sure you incline them as well. It is quite important to keep it in mind. Otherwise, the perspective of the head will be incorrect. At this stage, I work mostly on the bones of the skull. Pay more attention to it, to avoid mistakes in the structure of the head. Bones make up the shape of the head. I'm not working on the tonal values now. I will pay more attention to it when painting. I am darkening the shadows very lightly to add some volume to the underdrawing and highlight the borders between the light and shadow. Now you see that the shadows added some volume to the head. The head isn't simply flat anymore. We already see lights and shadows, so the volume slowly shows up. Once in a while, check the proportions. Especially when you start painting, do not think only about colors and paints. Sometimes go back to the drawing. Check the proportions of the large distances. They also affect the resemblance. I advise you to pay more attention to the eyes. Draw them a little longer, as it is a very complicated construction and shape. And when I start painting, I will explain the structure of the eye and spend time talking about the mistakes you may meet when painting it. Spend more time on the eyes, draw the eyelids a little bit, the upper and lower ones. Even at this stage, it is necessary to think a little about the structure of the head. As I mentioned, you should remember that there are big planes of the head, which make up the shape and volume. On this picture you see the main planes of the head. These planes turn toward the light source or away from it, getting either lighter or darker. Thus we perceive the volume. I slightly adjusted the eyebrows. I highly suggest to draw a pair of forms at the same time. I mean, when you draw one eye, immediately outline the second one. If you draw each part separately, you risk making mistakes in perspective. I also think it is quite important to make a good composition of the portrait. So don't make the head too big or too small. It should not be bigger than life size. If it is huge, the head will fall out of the canvas. If it is tiny, it will drown in lots of empty space around. So it should be close to life size. You can slightly darken the eye sockets, just a little bit. Don't press the pencil too much. Emphasize the tip of the nose. It will become more three-dimensional and therefore stand out. Now I'm finishing the underdrawing. It is time to move on to the second stage. At the end, I'm making the final touches here and there. I adjust the inner corners of the eyes, the tip of the nose and nostrils, some other facial details and ears. Usually I do not spend much time on the underdrawing, but if you want, you can spend 2 or 3 hours and begin painting in oils only when you are satisfied with your underdrawing and when you feel that you are ready to start painting. At the end of the drawing, check the proportions once again. Make sure that the width of the face and its height match the original proportions. Check the size of the eyes, so they are not too big or too small, not too close to each other. Make sure that the tip of the nose isn't too wide. Check the height of the forehead. Check the overall shape of the head and outline the ear. I think that we can finish the underdrawing and begin blocking in. And now I'm gonna tell you what paints, brushes and mediums I will use for painting. I also must say that if you use charcoal for drawing, it is necessary to spray it, otherwise it will mix with the paints and make mud. If you use a graphite pencil, it is not necessary to spray it, especially if you haven't used a lot of graphite. I am not spraying my underdrawing.